Hello everyone, my name is Andy Hopper and I'm a solutions architect here at Shippo. Today, we're going to look at how you can use the Shippo SDK to integrate Shippo's services into your own application. For this video, we're going to use the SDK for Typescript, but we'll have other videos in our channel for languages like Python, Java, and C#. Let's get started. I have here a standard console application that I've written in Typescript, and I've opened it in Visual Studio Code. Obviously, your own application's code is probably going to be a lot more complicated than Hello World, but this is a decent starting point to walk you through the process. The very first thing I'll need to do is add a reference to the Shippo SDK for JavaScript. We publish our SDK to the standard NPM channels, and all you'll need to do is search for the word Shippo. Now that we've added our package, we're ready to start coding. In order to use the SDK, we'll need to create an SDK object. This is an object called Shippo, and it's provided by the Shippo package. You'll need to supply an API token, which you can obtain from the Shippo API portal. For this demo, I'm using a test token that I've generated. And let me go ahead and fix all missing imports here. Great, so let's go ahead and create a shipment. The shipment service is a child of the SDK object, and to create a shipment, we'll be calling the create method. One thing you might notice is that this method is async. This is a pattern you're going to see in both the JavaScript and the TypeScript SDKs. We're making network calls here, so we've made them all use Node.js's native async await feature. Now, to create a shipment, you need at least three things. You need a shipper address, you need a destination address, and then finally you need a list of parcels that are being delivered in this shipment. So let me go ahead and fix my imports here. Okay, great. Now, one thing I want to point out is in the address information, you've got the standard fields you would expect. You've got the either destination or shipper name. You've got street address, and by the way, there is a street too in case you have more details. City, state, zip, country, as well as contact information such as the phone number and the email address of the shipper or the recipient. And if you look below, you'll see parcel information that supply the dimensions and the weight of the parcel you're sending. Now, in this case, I'm using metric units, but these enumerations also include imperial units of measure such as feet, inches, or pounds and ounces for mass. So once we've created our shipment, I'm going to illustrate a best practice. Whenever you interact with the Shippo backend and you create objects, there's going to be an object ID assigned to them. This is a unique identifier, also known as a GUID, and if you ever need to interact with Shippo's technical support, having this object ID is a very handy thing to have. So do make sure that in your own logging backend that you're capturing this information as you're interacting with Shippo. Now that we've created our shipment, it's time to go rate shopping. By default, when you create a shipment and don't supply an existing rate, Shippo will fetch a set of rates that are offered for the available carriers for the package destination, dimensions, and weight that you provided. These rates will be on a per carrier basis with the service levels that carrier is offering as well as the price. All of this is returned in the rates property of the returned shipment. So let's go ahead and write out all of the rates that we received for the shipment. And as you can see here, let me go ahead and fix this import. I'm writing out, again, the object ID for the rate, the provider name, or otherwise known as the carrier name, the name of the service level that's being offered, as well as how long the carrier believes it'll take to deliver the package, and then finally what would be charged to deliver the package using that rate. Now, for the label that I want to purchase, I want to use the lowest rate available. So I'm just going to sort the rates by price, and I'll simply grab the first lowest one that I find. Okay, great. So we've created our shipment, we've selected a rate. Let's go ahead and request a label. Similar to the shipment service, there's a transactions service on the SDK object, which is what we'll use to create shipping labels. In this request, we'll specify that we want a PDF ready for a 4x6 label printer. We'll add some order reference information for future reference, and we'll supply the rate that we selected for the label. Let's go ahead and fix this import. And again, best practices, we're going to log that object ID. Now, one thing to be aware of, label generation can take a moment to complete. We have the option to wait until this process has completed by specifying that we don't want it to be an asynchronous call. However, in this case, I wanted to show you how async transactions work. After we create our transaction, the returned object will have a status attribute, and we can check that attribute for whether the transaction has completed successfully. If it's queued, we should wait a moment and simply check again, and that's what we're doing here. Finally, when our transaction has completed successfully, we're able to download our label. Here, I'm just going to write some boilerplate code that uses the HTTPS module to download the PDF to the current user's downloads folder. So I've written a lot of code. Now it's time to see this actually running. So I'm going to go ahead and F5 debug inside Visual Studio. And as we can see, we've created our shipment. We've got the object ID for the shipment right here. I've got the list of rates that were offered by USPS in this case. You can see I've been offered the service levels of Ground Advantage, Priority Mail Express, and Priority Mail. You also notice the rate prices. So you'll notice I've got a $4.33 US dollars, and because my code was going to look for the lowest rate available, I'm going to go ahead and use that to create my transaction. Once I created a transaction, I got the transaction ID, and you can see here what I've done is I've actually written out to the console the actual URL that was given to generate, to download that label, and then I downloaded it to my local downloads folder. So let's go ahead and open that label up. And here we go. So as you can see, it's been formatted to a 4x6 form factor, and you may notice it's got the watermark of sample do not mail on it. Again, this is because I used a test token. Had I used an actual production token, this would be a real label that I could have slapped on a package, but it would have charged me something to generate it. So what did we just do? Well, first we added a package reference for the Shippo module using npm. Once we had that installed, we were then able to create an instance of the Shippo SDK object, passing an API token that we got from the API portal. Once we had that ready, we were able to create a shipment, passing it the package details as well as the destination and sender addresses. And then we were able to look at the list of rates that were returned for that shipment. And again, we selected a rate, and my criteria in my case was the lowest rate available. Once I selected a rate, I was then able to generate a label, also known in Shippo speak as a transaction. And once it completed successfully, I was able to download the label and look at it locally. So what's next? Well, the first thing I would suggest is to go ahead and get a set of Shippo API credentials. If you don't already have a Shippo account, you can create one at https://appsgoshippo.com/join. And once you've created an account, you can go to the API portal and manage your API tokens. And again, one thing I recommend is during development, use a test token. This will ensure that you can verify that your code's working properly without actually incurring any charges on your account. If you want to look at the code that we used for this video, you can navigate to our GitHub repo at goshippo/Shippo Typescript SDK demo. And if you want to learn more about the Shippo API, you can go to our API site at docs.goshippo.com. Thank you very much for watching, and we look forward to helping you serve your shipping needs.